All right, sit down and grab a cup, because this is the story everyone's too polite to tell out loud. You see, Meghan Markle's life looks like a fantasy pulled straight from a glossy magazine. The designer wardrobes, the private jets, that Montecito mansion gleaming under the California sun, her face glowing on magazine covers, always perfectly lit, always flawless. But here's where it gets interesting. When you follow the money, things start to look off, like really off, because the math, it just doesn't add up. On paper, the income doesn't match the lifestyle. The Netflix deal, whisper quiet. The Spotify deal, poof, gone. Brand collaborations, scattered, inconsistent, fading faster than an influencer's 15 minutes, and yet the luxury hasn't slowed. People close to her circle say there's a secret phrase being whispered behind closed doors: funding continuity. That's the polite way of saying someone's footing the bills quietly, strategically, and definitely not out of kindness. And that's where this story really begins. Not with love, not with fame, but with money. Serious money. Because once you peel away the royal titles and shiny headlines, what's left is a woman living a billionaire life without billionaire income. And if you're paying attention, that mystery alone says more about Meghan Markle than any interview ever could. The crown gave her fame, but the fortune? Oh, that came from somewhere else entirely. When Meghan first stepped into the royal world, she thought she'd landed the ultimate jackpot. Castles, carriages, an endless allowance. The works. She imagined unimaginable wealth, right? Except the royal reality wasn't that glamorous. Prince Harry's personal net worth? Nowhere near royal rich. Comfortable, sure, but not billionaire level. Most of his income came from his late mother's inheritance and a small military pension. The palaces, the jewels, the estates, those weren't his. They belonged to the crown. According to palace insiders, Meghan figured this out fast. That golden ticket she thought she'd secured, it wasn't a vault of treasure. It was a centuries-old institution, one she couldn't control. And Meghan Markle, she's not built for the background. That's when the fairy tale started to crack. The sparkle of royal duty dulled quickly. Behind those palace walls, there was a brutal truth. Being royal didn't mean being rich, it meant being restrained. And Meghan Markle doesn't do restrained. That's when her mindset shifted. From princess to planner. If the palace couldn't give her financial freedom, she'd find it elsewhere. She didn't marry a prince for love of the crown. She married a man she could turn into capital. To understand where all the whispers began, you have to rewind. Not to Montecito, not to Netflix, but to the years before Prince Harry ever appeared. Back when Meghan Markle was quietly orbiting the edges of power, watching, learning, calculating. Before the documentaries and the brand deals, there were patterns, parties, flights, exclusive trips. She was always there, right next to the billionaires who would later help shape her climb. And one place comes up over and over again: Soho House. It wasn't just a club, it was a gateway. The kind of place where connections aren't made, they're bought. Behind that gate stood men like Ron Burkle, billionaire investor, royal insider, and future private jet provider for Meghan's exclusive adventures. This, according to sources, is where the real Meghan Markle network was born. Off the books, away from cameras, far from headlines. Long before Harry became her golden link. This wasn't about acting anymore, it was about access. When people ask, who funds Meghan Markle's lifestyle? The answer isn't a single name or account. It's about who she's attached herself to. Those early Soho House years, they were her training ground. She wasn't just mingling, she was studying power. Every dinner, every event, every introduction was another step into the world where billionaires don't just exist, they own the game. That's where she met the big players, like Burkle, deeply tied to the royal web itself. His private jets, his charity galas, his estates, they quietly built the invisible staircase that Meghan climbed. Then came the yacht trips, the quiet Mediterranean getaways, a swirl of actresses, influencers, and investors all blending together. Meghan wasn't the star yet, but she was always present. Present beside money, present beside power, present beside the people who could fund her next chapter. By the time she met Harry, Meghan had already mastered the art of being accidentally invited. Nothing about her positioning was random. It was strategic. Always has been. Her comfort didn't come from royal wealth. It came from access. And access, that's a currency of its own. That's a currency. Once you see how Meghan's early years played out, all those luxury circles, private flights, velvet ropes, the whispers about her current lifestyle suddenly make perfect sense. This isn't a new mystery, it's continuity. Because, let's be honest, people don't just stumble into that billionaire world, they get sponsored into it. Every glitzy dinner at Soho House, every secret retreat, every first-class seat wasn't random. There was always someone powerful enough to cover the cost and discreet enough to never brag about it. And that right there is what makes the current situation so intriguing. How does Meghan Markle's world keep spinning so flawlessly when her public ventures keep slipping, when the Sussex brand wobbles, when Netflix projects stall, when production companies go quiet, when partnerships crumble? Why does nothing in her lifestyle change? Who's keeping those jets in the air, those retreats booked, those staff members quietly paid? Because the money trail doesn't point to royal savings or media contracts. It points to something older, a network built long before Montecito ever glittered on the horizon. A web of connections based on proximity to power, not ownership of it. Sources whisper that many of those early benefactors are still around today, quiet, loyal, strategic. They're the shadow sponsors who make sure the Markle machine never stops humming. They don't need contracts. They don't need credit. All they need is access. And as long as Meghan stays visible, as long as she's relevant, the arrangement stays alive. In public, Meghan Markle radiates independence. She's the image of the self-made duchess, the woman who broke away from royal chains to build her own empire. She's all about empowerment, entrepreneurship, and finding your voice. While the world sees a glamorous rebel duchess, she's playing a far more sophisticated game, the game of longevity. She doesn't need every deal to win. She just needs enough influence to stay relevant, enough alliances to stay protected, enough whispers to keep her name alive. In a world obsessed with exposure, Meghan mastered invisibility, not her own, but that of the people keeping her afloat. So when you scroll through those Montecito photos or see her gracing another cover, remember this: it's not always the visible that matters. It's the invisible, the quiet investors, the secret phone calls, the old alliances that never really ended. Meghan Markle didn't just marry into a royal family, she married into an entire system of access, and she's never let go of it. The crown gave her the spotlight, sure, but it's those silent backers, those friends in high places, who've kept that spotlight from ever dimming. Because in Meghan's world, the show must always go on, and the most powerful thing about her story isn't what we see, it's what we don't. Behind the sparkle, behind the smiles, behind every picture-perfect post, there's a network, a history, and a strategy that's kept her right where she wants to be, front and center, forever untouchable.